Thank you for joining us for our series dedicated to the 2014 Standards for Accreditation. As part of their membership, Middle States accredited institutions must demonstrate that they meet or exceed the expectations for academic and institutional integrity and quality promoted through the 2014 Standards for Accreditation and Requirements of Affiliation. This module will share the expectations relating to Standard 2, Ethics and Integrity. After viewing this video, we hope that you will become familiar with the 2014 Standards for Accreditation, be able to assess institutional compliance using the criteria from Standard 2, understand what documentation will be useful in demonstrating compliance with Standard 2, be able to articulate the role of assessment as it relates to Standard 2, and better understand the Commission's requirements of affiliation and how they relate to Standard 2. While the Commission has many relevant resources to assist you and your colleagues with demonstrating compliance with the standards and requirements of affiliation, the focus of this presentation will come from the Commission's publication, Standards for Accreditation and Requirements of Affiliation, the 13th edition. You can find this on the Commission's website and download a PDF version if you do not have a hard copy. This presentation will focus on Standard 2, which you can find by turning to page 5. In total, the process for ensuring compliance relies on a determination that an institution has demonstrated that it's in compliance with the Commission's 15 requirements of affiliation and 7 standards for accreditation. Compliance with both the requirements of affiliation and the standards for accreditation is expected to be continuous. Institutions are, in most instances, comprehensively evaluated on both the requirements of affiliation and standards for accreditation at the time of their self-study evaluation. Institutions will be evaluated according to the requirements, standards, and their criteria within the context of institutional mission. This slide lists the Commission's 15 requirements of affiliation. You can find the requirements of affiliation on pages 2 and 3 of the 2014 Standards for Accreditation and Requirements of Affiliation Guide. While no specific requirement has been tied to Standard 2, the Commission expects all operations of an institution to be defined by ethics and integrity and the guidance provided in this standard. Let's review the language and the criteria of Standard 2. Standard 2, Ethics and Integrity. Ethics and integrity are central, indispensable, and defining hallmarks of effective higher education institutions. In all activities, whether internal or external, an institution must be faithful to its mission, honor its contracts and commitments, adhere to its policies, and represent itself truthfully. While the institution's mission defines the scope of the institution and delineates its character and individuality, in Standard 2, the Commission expects institutions to demonstrate compliance by operating with integrity and showing ethical attributes in the various institutional ventures and activities. Several points are worth noting. The standard emphasizes the importance of the institution's faithfulness to its mission, the importance of a respectful campus climate, the need for fair and impartial practices, and finally, the expectation of the institution's compliance with applicable federal, state, and Commission policies. In what follows, the various criteria that constitute Standard 2, Ethics and Integrity, will be explained. This standard has a total of 9 criteria, which are noted on this and the next 2 slides in general terms. As we review the criteria, you and your colleagues should be thinking about resources that are available at the institution that could be relied upon to demonstrate compliance with each criteria. Criteria 1 through 3 cover academic freedom, campus climate, and grievance or complaint policies. Criteria 4, 5, and 6 cover conflict of interest, fair and impartial practices in hiring and evaluation, and the honesty in public relations. On this slide, you see the final 3 criteria of Standard 2, covering affordability and accessibility, compliance with other applicable regulations and requirements, and the periodic assessment of the institution's ethics and integrity. These 3 slides have highlighted the 9 criteria embedded within Standard 2. Now we will look more closely at each one. Criterion 1 requires institutions to show evidence of how they demonstrate a commitment to academic freedom, intellectual freedom, freedom of expression, and respect for institutional property rights. In thinking about an institution's practices regarding these areas, it's important to consider related policies and processes that might be unique to the institution, as those too would be relevant under Criterion 1. Middle States does not prescribe any specific approach to supporting campus climate. Some institutions have offices specifically designated to supporting this criteria. For example, an Office of Multicultural Student Affairs or an Office of Diversity. Some have committees exploring and supporting institutional climate, such as an LGBTQ task force. Some institutions have diversity plans and are utilizing data regarding the diversity of faculty and staff as well as students to measure within this criterion. Institutions may have diversity as a strategic priority or goal, or as part of the mission statement. Measures should be established to demonstrate how the institution is meeting those priorities, goals, or mission. Still others may conduct culture and climate surveys or use existing surveys to extract those elements that measure and speak to diversity and respect. For example, Community College Survey of Student Engagement, CCSSE, has specific questions that could lend to an analysis of this criterion, but it is not the only way to measure. Also relevant to this criterion would be freedom of expression and academic freedom and respect among students and employees, which ties to Criterion 1 as well. Besides being a federal requirement, Middle States member institutions must be able to show evidence that they have a fair and impartial grievance or complaint process and policies, and that complaints or grievances raised by students, faculty, or staff will be addressed promptly, appropriately, and equitably. Frequently, Middle States receives questions as to what defines a grievance or a complaint. There is no set single definition, and whatever process and policies are in place should be ones that best fit the institution's mission, campus, and community. In Criterion 4, institutions should provide evidence that the institution and its constituents, its staff, faculty, administration, or governing board, for example, avoid conflict of interest and the appearance of conflict of interest in all activities, including partnerships, business or real estate acquisitions, and legal cases involving the institution. Institutions will typically be providing evidence of policies and procedures on ethical conduct of employees, including employee or faculty handbooks. In Criterion 5, institutions should show evidence of procedures and guidelines in the hiring, evaluation, promotion, discipline, and separation of employees. This criterion would include policies and guidelines on the selection, promotion, and tenure of faculty, as well as teaching evaluations, including full and part-time or adjunct faculty. Ethics in college or university relations is contained in Criterion 6. Here, institutions will show evidence of their clear policies and procedures supporting the honesty and truthfulness of their student admissions and recruiting practices, accessibility, and internal and external communications. Institutions should also show accurate and appropriate language in messaging and communications with key constituencies, including prospective students and alumni. Institutions should make a reasonable effort to promote affordability and accessibility of their programs to their students, as well as helping current and prospective students understand funding sources and options available to them, and how to make informed decisions about financial aid and incurring debt. Institutions should make students aware of the cost of the education at the institution and provide information on need-based financial aid, including grants and scholarships, as applicable to the mission of the institution. Information for students, parents, and the public relating to the affordability and accessibility of the institution is also required as part of the Higher Education Opportunity Act and will be reported on in part in the Report on Institutional Compliance with Federal Regulations. Institutions are required to post this information on their HEOA or Student Right to Know page. Institutions are required to show evidence of compliance with all applicable federal, state, and commission reporting policies and regulations and requirements. While some of this information on graduation, retention, certification and licensure or licensing board pass rates, and requirements of affiliation 1 through 7 and 14 will be covered or partially covered by the institution's report on compliance with accreditation relevant federal regulations, the institution has an obligation to show continued compliance with other commission policies, such as substantive change, credit hour, and transfer prior learning and articulation, through their relationship with the Commission and planning operations. These and other policies can be found on the Commission's website. With periodic assessment included in every standard, institutional assessment practices continue to be critical. The Commission expects institutions to engage in sound assessment that lends to institutional improvement. Periodic evaluation of the role of ethics and integrity in politics, practices, and institutional leadership should be embedded within the many assessments and evaluations that are carried out throughout the campus. The next slide provides you with basic, key questions relating to assessment within this standard. Again, assessment is embedded within every standard. Key questions regarding the assessments taking place relating to institutional ethics and integrity include: is the process meaningful? To what extent do stakeholders trust what information is in front of them? How well are the assessments directly related to the institution's ethics and integrity? Is the process useful? After receiving the assessment information, how engaged are key institutional stakeholders in using the information to enhance the ethics and integrity, to consider shifts in services or programs, or in other areas that could impact the institution's ethics and integrity? What are the ties from the assessment practices to the institutional planning, resource allocation, and institutional effectiveness evaluations? Is the process cost-effective and efficient? Is the process efficient enough to be worth the effort? To what extent has assessment become an ordinary process as opposed to being a burden? Can multiple stakeholders attest to how the assessment process has added value to their professional practice? These are important questions that, when answered, can enable institutions to continuously improve the student experience, ensuring that ethics and integrity is maximized and sustained over time. Having reviewed all of the criteria, it's important to come back to and reflect upon the language of the standard. These criteria, taken together, specify the characteristics or qualities that encompass Standard 2. Alongside the standard itself, these criteria should be considered holistically within the context of the institutional mission. Remember, the criteria do not represent a checklist. However, they embody the areas that the institutions are expected to address as part of their accreditation activities to align evidence against the standard. The language of the standard should not be lost within the criteria, and institutions should demonstrate how they embody the language of the standard, as well as have policies, procedures, or other documentation relating to each criterion. Let's focus on evidence for a moment. This slide provides you with a list of possible policies, procedures, and documentation that institutions may use to demonstrate that they meet this standard. This list does not imply that these are the required documents, nor does it imply that these are the only documents. What the Commission wants to convey is that it will be critically important for you and your colleagues to determine what evidence, in the form of policies, procedures, and other documentation, exists at the institution to provide evidence of effectiveness, institutional improvement, and compliance under this standard. Aligning institutional evidence alongside of each criterion lends to a gap analysis that can be done to determine where resources may need to be developed, better documented, or updated. The current practice and process at the Commission is to capture institutional evidence in what we call a documentation roadmap. This is a template document that provides institutions with a listing of the criteria with each standard, with an accompanying box for institutions to fill in with their evidence. It is a document that allows for an institution to conduct a gap analysis quickly and easily, and serves as a tool for gathering evidence. Again, because the criteria are listed along with the requirements of affiliation, this template will promote resource and evidence gathering in an organized and methodical manner designed to support the accreditation activities. The documentation roadmap template is available on the Commission's website. The Commission hosts a variety of activities, online and face-to-face, designed to keep you informed about our expectations, support the activities of member institutions, and provide you with avenues to collaborate with colleagues across the region. Those include webinars, workshops, training for peer evaluators, as well as our annual conference. If you have ideas about specific opportunities that you would like to see the Commission support, please contact us to let us know. You can find additional information about the Commission through our website, including how to reach staff. If you have any questions about the information presented today, please contact your staff liaison at Middle States. Every member institution is assigned a staff liaison. To find out who's been assigned to your institution, visit the website and click on Institutions. Find your institution listed and click on Detail View. Other information about your institution is available through the link Statement of Accreditation Status, which is below the Detailed View link.